Before we continue with what happened next, let's remember where we left off. Sarah's ex-husband Daniel walked into her charity gala with his new fiancée Jessica, expecting to see Sarah broken and struggling. Instead, he watched Alexander Sinclair, yes, the Alexander Sinclair, billionaire and philanthropist, kiss Sarah like she was the only woman in the world. Sarah finally stood up to Daniel. She told him exactly what she thought about their 7-year marriage, where she was never quite enough for him or his mother. She walked away with her head held high. Daniel left the gala early, clearly shaken. Meanwhile, Sarah celebrated the most successful night of her professional life. But that was just the beginning. 2 weeks after the gala, Sarah was sitting in her office at the Riverside Gallery. Hello family, welcome back. Please take a moment to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. It truly means a lot to us. Don't forget to share it with your friends and loved ones and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. So sit back and relax as we dive into the story. Sarah's phone buzzed on her desk. She glanced at the screen and her stomach dropped. It was a number she had blocked months ago. A number she still had memorized. Daniel. We need to talk about your behavior at the gala, the message read. That was inappropriate and embarrassing for everyone involved. Sarah stared at the words. 2 weeks had passed since that incredible night. 2 weeks since she'd stood up to Daniel. 2 weeks since Alexander Sinclair had kissed her in front of everyone. And now Daniel wanted to lecture her about being embarrassing? Rachel walked into Sarah's office at the Riverside Gallery carrying 2 coffees. She had that look on her face. The one that meant she had news to share. Girl, Rachel said, setting a latte on Sarah's desk. You need to check the society pages. You and Alexander are everywhere. She pulled out her phone and showed Sarah article after article. Photos of them on the balcony. Headlines like Mystery Curator Captures Billionaire's Heart and Alexander Sinclair's New Romance. Who is Sarah Thompson? Sarah's stomach did a little flip. This was more attention than she'd ever wanted. But she couldn't deny it felt good to be seen as successful, not as Daniel's struggling ex-wife. Look at this one, Rachel said, scrolling. They're calling you a rising star in the art world. Sarah smiled. The gala had raised over $2 million for emerging artists. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing with congratulations and new opportunities. She showed Rachel the text from Daniel. Rachel literally laughed out loud. The audacity, Rachel said. The absolute audacity of this man. Sarah didn't respond to Daniel's message. Why would she? She had moved on. She was happy. She was building something real. But the universe wasn't done testing her yet. That same afternoon, Sarah's desk phone rang. When she answered, she heard a voice she'd hoped never to hear again. Sarah, this is Margaret Davis. Daniel's mother. Sarah's hands immediately started shaking. 7 years of trying to please this woman came flooding back. 7 years of never being good enough. 7 years of racist comments and cold judgment. Mrs. Davis, Sarah said, keeping her voice professional. How can I help you? You can start by explaining what kind of spectacle you made at that gala, Margaret said. Her tone was cold and cutting. Do you know how many people from Daniel's hospital were there? How embarrassing this has been for him. Sarah felt her heart pounding. The old Sarah would have apologized. Would have tried to explain. Would have made herself smaller. But that Sarah was gone. Embarrassing for him? Sarah repeated slowly. What would she say to this woman who had made her life miserable for 7 years? Would she finally speak her truth, or would old habits win? Something inside Sarah shifted. A switch flipped. The chains that had held her silent for so long finally broke free. How it looks, Sarah said calmly, is that I moved on with my life, Mrs. Davis. It looks like I'm successful and happy. Maybe Daniel should try doing the same instead of having his mother fight his battles. The silence on the other end was deafening. Sarah could practically hear Margaret's shock through the phone. Then Margaret's voice came back, sharp and bitter. You always were ungrateful. We welcomed you into our family. Sarah didn't let her finish. Not this time. No, you didn't, Sarah interrupted. Her voice was steady and strong. You tolerated me. You made comments about my hair, my career, my family. You told Daniel I wasn't what you envisioned for him. Well, good news. I'm not his anymore. Have a nice day, Mrs. Davis. And Sarah hung up. Rachel, who had been listening to Sarah's side of the conversation, started clapping. Her eyes were shining with pride. That's my girl, Rachel said, beaming. That's my girl. Sarah's hands were still shaking, but this time it was from adrenaline, not fear. She had just hung up on Margaret Davis, the woman who had intimidated her for 7 years. And it felt amazing. But the week was just getting started. That Thursday, Sarah had her first official business meeting with Alexander. It was about the $50 million art acquisition project for his new luxury development headquarters. $50 million. It was the biggest project of Sarah's career. As she rode the elevator up to Alexander's penthouse office downtown, Sarah felt nervous. Not because of Alexander but because of what people might think. Would they say she only got this opportunity because they'd kissed at the gala? The elevator doors opened. The view alone was worth the ride. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. Modern art hung on the walls. And Alexander stood by his desk in a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly. "Sarah," he said, smiling warmly. "Thank you for coming." They sat down and for the first hour it was all business. Alexander showed her the architectural plans. He talked about his vision for making this building a cultural landmark. He asked for her professional opinion on everything. Sculpture installations, rotating gallery spaces, display lighting, color schemes. The man was brilliant. He asked questions that showed he actually understood art, not just the investment value. Sarah found herself relaxing. This wasn't about their kiss at the gala. This was about her talent, her vision, her expertise. But then, as they were wrapping up, Alexander said something that made her heart skip. "I need you to know something," he said, leaning forward. "This opportunity is based entirely on your talent. I've been following your work for over a year. Long before we met. I would have offered you this project regardless of what happened at the gala." Sarah looked at him, searching his face for any sign of dishonesty. She found none. "But what did happen at the gala does complicate things, doesn't it?" she asked carefully. Alexander leaned back in his chair, considering her words. "It complicates things if we let it. Or we can be honest about it. Yes, there's an attraction here. Yes, I'd like to take you to dinner again. But I'm also a professional and so are you. We're both adults. We can navigate this." Sarah appreciated his directness. No games. No pretending the chemistry wasn't there. Just honest communication. "One day at a time," Sarah suggested. Alexander smiled. One day at a time. But would Daniel let them have peace? Or was he just getting started with his interference? Sarah left that meeting feeling lighter than she had in years. For the first time, she was with someone who saw her professional value as separate from any personal connection. Both were equally important to Alexander. Daniel had always made Sarah feel like her art was a cute hobby. Something to keep her busy while he pursued the real career. But Alexander saw her work as essential. Valuable. Worth $50 million of investment. That difference was everything. But if Sarah thought Daniel was just going to accept this and move on, she was wrong. Men with bruised egos don't give up that easily. Over the next 2 weeks, Daniel started showing up everywhere Sarah went. Her favorite coffee shop on Saturday mornings? There was Daniel, coincidentally in line behind her. The restaurant where she and Rachel had their monthly dinner? Daniel was at the bar, nursing a drink and watching. The bookstore where Sarah browsed art collections? Daniel was suddenly interested in the same section. It was like being haunted by a man who'd already had his chance and blown it. Sarah tried to ignore him. She tried to pretend she didn't notice. But it was getting harder and harder to stay calm. Finally, one evening, Daniel cornered her outside the gallery as she was leaving work. The sun was setting and the street was mostly empty. "Sarah, please," Daniel said, stepping in front of her. "Can we just talk? Really talk?" Sarah stopped. She took a deep breath and turned to face him. He looked different. Tired maybe. Less put together than usual. His hair wasn't perfectly styled. His tie was slightly loose. "Daniel, what do you want?" Sarah asked, her voice tired. "I want to apologize," Daniel said quickly. "I was wrong about everything. About leaving you. About Jessica. About not standing up to my mother. I made a mistake." He stepped closer. Sarah could smell his cologne. The same one he'd worn throughout their marriage. "We were good together," Daniel continued. "And I threw it away. I see that now. I see what I lost. Here's the thing about apologies from people who hurt you. They don't land the way they think they will." Sarah didn't feel victorious. She didn't feel vindicated. She just felt tired. "Daniel," Sarah said gently but firmly, "we weren't good together. Not really." Daniel's face fell. "What? Of course we were. We had 7 years. 7 years where I made myself smaller so you could feel bigger," Sarah interrupted. "That's not a partnership, Daniel. That's not love." She looked him in the eyes. Really looked at him. "And you know what? I'm grateful you left. Because I would have stayed forever trying to be enough for you. And I never would have discovered that I was already enough all along." Daniel's expression changed. His jaw tightened. His eyes hardened. "That's not fair," he said, his voice rising. "You're different now. This isn't the real you, Sarah. You're trying to be someone you're not to impress him." And there it was. The gaslighting that used to work on her. Making her question her own reality. Making her doubt herself. But not anymore. "No, Daniel," Sarah said firmly. "This is the real me. The woman you met was real too. But she was dimmed down trying to fit into your life. This version? She's just turned up to full brightness. I'm sorry if that's hard for you to see, but it's not my problem anymore." Sarah walked away. And for the first time, she didn't look back to see his reaction. She didn't care. That's when she knew she was really healing. But the next day brought something Sarah never expected. Would it be good news or bad? Would someone from her past help her or hurt her? The next day, something happened that Sarah never expected. Jessica showed up at the gallery. At first, Sarah thought she was coming to confront her. Maybe to tell her to stay away from Daniel. Maybe to yell at her for ruining their relationship. But when Sarah saw Jessica's face, she realized the woman had been crying. Her mascara was smudged. Her eyes were red and puffy. "Can we talk?" Jessica asked quietly. "Just for a few minutes?" Sarah hesitated, then nodded. They went to Sarah's office and Jessica sat down, fidgeting with her engagement ring. She twisted it around and around on her finger. "I need to ask you something," Jessica said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Was Daniel always like this? Obsessed with appearances? Needing constant validation from his mother?" Sarah didn't want to trash-talk Daniel to his fiancée. But she also wasn't going to lie. "Yes," Sarah said simply. "He was. I just didn't see it clearly until after he left." Jessica nodded. Tears spilled over and ran down her cheeks. "He keeps bringing you up. Comparing me to you. Asking if I think you're really happy with Alexander or if you're just trying to make him jealous." She looked up at Sarah with heartbroken eyes. "I'm starting to think he proposed to me just to prove something. Not because he actually wants to marry me." Sarah's heart actually hurt for her. Jessica was where Sarah had been. Trying so hard to be chosen by a man who couldn't even choose himself. "Jessica," Sarah said carefully, leaning forward. "I can't tell you what to do. But I can tell you this. Being someone's second choice feels like poison in your veins. Slowly killing you while you smile and pretend it's fine." Jessica wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "You deserve to be someone's first choice," Sarah continued. "Their only choice. Not someone they settled for because they couldn't have who they really wanted." Jessica left shortly after. Sarah sat in her office thinking about how women are taught to compete with each other, when they should be warning each other about men who aren't ready. Sarah didn't want to be Jessica's enemy. Jessica wasn't the villain in her story. Daniel was his own villain. And Jessica was just another woman trying to survive his inability to truly see or value anyone. Meanwhile, Sarah's relationship with Alexander was developing in the most unexpected way. He wasn't rushing her. Wasn't pushing for more than she was ready to give. They had dinner dates where they talked for hours. About art and life. About their childhoods and dreams. Alexander told her about growing up in Detroit. About losing his father when he was 16 and having to help his mother keep their small business afloat. About being told by investors that he was too young, too inexperienced, too ambitious. About building his empire from nothing because he refused to accept other people's limitations. And Sarah told him things she'd never told Daniel. About growing up in a family that didn't understand why she wanted to study art instead of becoming a lawyer or doctor. About the professors who told her that women like her didn't have the sensibility for classical curation. About every time she'd been underestimated and had to work twice as hard to prove she belonged in spaces that weren't designed for her. Alexander listened to all of it with this intensity that made Sarah feel like her words mattered. Like her experiences mattered. Like she mattered. One evening, about 6 weeks after the gala, Alexander picked Sarah up in a helicopter. "Yes, a helicopter. Where are we going?" Sarah asked, half laughing. This was absurd and wonderful and terrifying all at once. "There's a private art showing on the coast," Alexander said with a mysterious smile. "I thought you might want to see it before it opens to the public tomorrow. What would happen on this magical evening? And would Daniel's interference finally catch up to them?" They flew over the city as the sun set. Sarah watched the buildings grow smaller below them. The sky turned orange and pink and purple. Sarah remembered thinking that this felt like someone else's life. Like she'd stepped into a movie where the girl actually gets the fairy tale. The gallery was stunning. Right on the beach with waves crashing nearby. They spent hours walking through it, discussing the pieces, debating techniques and meaning. Then they walked on the beach. barefoot in the sand. The waves rolled in and out, washing over their feet. Alexander stopped and turned to Sarah. The moonlight made his eyes look softer, warmer. "I know we said we'd take this slow," he said. "And we are. But I need you to know something. You're not a rebound for me. You're not a phase or a conquest or a way to pass time." He took her hands in his. "You're someone I genuinely want to know. All of you. At whatever pace you need." Sarah kissed him then. Really kissed him. With the waves crashing behind them and the stars starting to appear above. And she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Safe. Not because he was rescuing her, but because he was showing up as himself and inviting her to do the same. Of course there were paparazzi on that beach. Because apparently billionaires can't do anything privately. The photos were everywhere the next morning. Sarah and Alexander kissing at sunset. Looking like something out of a romance novel. And Daniel saw them. According to Rachel, who heard it from someone at his hospital, Daniel completely lost it. He started yelling in the doctor's lounge. Through his phone. The whole dramatic scene. Jessica finally ended their engagement 2 days later. She called Sarah to tell her, which surprised Sarah. "Thank you," Jessica said over the phone. "For being honest with me. For helping me see that I deserve better than being someone's consolation prize." They weren't going to be best friends or anything. But there was this moment of understanding between them. Two women who'd both tried to love a man who wasn't capable of loving anyone more than he loved his own ego. But Daniel's mother wasn't finished yet. Margaret made her final power move. She was on the hospital board, yes. But she also had connections with several of the gallery's board members. She started calling them. Raising concerns about conflicts of interest with Sarah's project with Alexander. Suggesting that maybe Sarah's judgment was compromised by their personal relationship. Rachel found out and immediately told Sarah. Sarah won't lie, she was scared. This project was her career-defining moment. The thought of losing it because of Daniel's family's pettiness made her want to scream. But Sarah didn't have to fight that battle alone. Her gallery director called a board meeting. She stood up for Sarah. Showed them Sarah's entire portfolio and track record. Sarah Thompson got this opportunity because she's the best curator in the city, the director said firmly. If we start questioning her professional judgment because of her personal life, we're no better than the institutions that question women's competence whenever they're not performing suffering. The board voted unanimously to support Sarah and Alexander. Alexander never mentioned it to Sarah, but Rachel found out later that several board members suddenly withdrew their concerns after receiving calls from Alexander's legal team. He had Sarah's back. Without making it about him saving her. Without making her feel small or weak. 3 months after the gala, Sarah opened her own art exhibition. Not as a curator. As an artist. Her own work under her own name. No more hiding behind fake names. No more being afraid. The opening night was packed. Sarah's family came, finally understanding that this wasn't just a hobby but her calling. Rachel cried actual tears when she saw the centerpiece. It was a massive painting called Emergence. It showed a woman breaking through chains made of other people's expectations. Alexander was there, of course. Standing in the back. Letting Sarah have her spotlight. And Daniel showed up too. Because apparently the man couldn't help himself. But this time something was different. Would Sarah feel anger when she saw him? Or had she finally truly moved on? Sarah saw Daniel across the room. And she felt nothing. Not anger. Not vindication. Not even satisfaction. Just nothing. He was just another person at her show. Another face in the crowd. Daniel approached her at one point. Sarah could see something had changed in him too. He looked different. Maybe he'd been in therapy. Maybe just time and consequences had humbled him. "Sarah," Daniel said quietly, "I'm genuinely sorry for all of it. You deserved better, and I hope you know that now." Sarah looked at this man who had once meant everything to her. This man who had broken her heart. This man who had made her feel small. "I appreciate that," Sarah said simply. "I hope you figure out what you're looking for, Daniel. I really do." And she meant it. Not because she'd forgiven everything or forgotten the pain. But because holding on to anger was taking up space where joy could live. Daniel nodded. He looked like he wanted to say more but didn't. He turned and left. Sarah went back to celebrating with people who actually valued her. People who saw her worth. People who lifted her up instead of tearing her down. Later that night, Sarah and Alexander stood on the gallery's rooftop terrace. They looked out at the city lights twinkling below them. "You know what I love most about you?" Alexander asked. Sarah turned to look at him. This man who'd somehow become such an important part of her life in such a short time. "What?" she asked. That you didn't need me to save you, he said, his voice full of admiration. You saved yourself. I'm just lucky enough to be here for the next chapter. He kissed her then. Soft and sweet. And Sarah realized that this was what healthy love felt like. Not someone trying to fix you or complete you, but someone celebrating who you already are while supporting who you're becoming. The exhibition sold out that opening night. Every single piece. Yes, Alexander bought one. But so did strangers who'd never heard Sarah's name before. People who saw value in her work because it was valuable. Not because of who she was dating or who her ex-husband was. That validation, the kind that comes from your own talent and hard work, hit different than anything else. Daniel texted Sarah last week asking how she was doing. Sarah didn't even open the message. Not out of pettiness, but because she genuinely forgot to respond. When you're living your best life, you don't have time to entertain people who questioned your value. Sarah and Alexander are still taking things one day at a time. Building something real without rushing. Whether they work out long-term or not, Sarah is grateful. Grateful that Alexander reminded her that the right person will celebrate you, not tolerate you. Grateful that his presence in her life helped her rediscover parts of herself she'd forgotten existed. But most importantly, Sarah is grateful to herself. For doing the work. For going to therapy. For standing up to Daniel and his mother. For taking a chance on her own art. For believing, finally, that she was enough. Because here's the truth nobody tells you. Healing isn't linear. Sometimes you need to fall apart before you can rebuild yourself into someone stronger. Sarah learned that her ex moving on wasn't her downgrade. It was her liberation. The right person won't make you prove your worth. They'll see it immediately. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming so genuinely happy that you forget to care what your ex thinks. Sarah stands in her gallery now, surrounded by her own art. Art that people bought because it moved them. Because it spoke to them. Because it was good. She thinks about the woman she was 3 months ago. Standing in front of her closet, scared to face Daniel at the gala. Scared that she wasn't enough. That woman seems like a stranger now. Rachel walks up beside her, looping her arm through Sarah's. You did it, girl, Rachel says softly. You really did it. Sarah smiles. We did it. I couldn't have done this without you. Alexander joins them, slipping his hand into Sarah's. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't need to. His presence says everything. Sarah takes a deep breath. She looks around at her art, her friends, her new beginning. This is her life now. A life she built herself. A life where she's enough. Where she's always been enough. And oh, one more thing. Alexander proposed last month. Sarah said yes. Not because she needs him to complete her. Not because she's afraid to be alone. But because choosing him feels like choosing herself. Choosing joy. Choosing a partner who sees her full brightness and loves her even more for it. The wedding is next spring. Small and intimate. Just the people who matter. The people who've always believed in her. Daniel won't be invited. We've come to the end of today's story. I hope it touched your heart. Thanks for watching and staying with us till the end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. See you in the next one. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from?